Om Sang Saraswati Namaha. Namaste. Namaste, everyone. This evening we're going to discuss some more questions about performance of the funeral rites. Now remember, we have three stages to the funeral. The first is the Shavadaha, which is the burning of the corpse. The second is the Pretutsarga, which is the releasing of the soul and the honoring of all those who helped us to escort this soul to the higher worlds. And the third is the Shraddha, which is the memorial ceremony, which is performed 10 days after the burning of the corpse. So we have a question from Vish. Namaste, Vish. Are we evolving in between births when we have no body? Or is it required we need a body to evolve? Vish, in our philosophy, we make our plan without a body. That's done with only a mind or mental capacity, or only in the subtle body. And then we execute that plan in the gross body. So when I have this physical body, I should be engaged in execution of the plans that I've been making in my subtle body. Dan is asking, Swamiji, we often hear in yogic thinking that part of the goal is to live as long as we can so we can continue our sadhana. Is this true? Can you speak about this? Dan, I would suggest when we are doing sadhana, we are doing nitya karma. Now remember, there are four kinds of karma. There's Sangshipta. It's over, done with, past. There's birth one. It's present, what's going on right now in this moment. And there's Bhavish, which is going to come into the future. And there's Prarabdha, that's our Bhavishat. The actions which were commenced in the past, which will come to fruition in the future. So there's past, present, and future. That is Sangshipta, Bhartman, Prarabdha. Prarabdha is the other name of Bhavish. Because what's coming in the future is what the seeds that we sowed in the past, we're going to harvest in the future. And the fourth kind of karma is nitya karma. It's eternal, it's ongoing, it's not dependent upon time, place, and location. It's something that's just going on eternally, and we define nitya karma as the same definition as karma yoga, which we have defined and distinguished as siddhanta achara. The behaviors performed in accordance with the scripture, namely the 7 behaviors: puja, pat, homa, sangit, nrit, pravachan, and arpana. Puja is worship, pat, recitation of scriptures, homa, the sacred fire ceremony. Sangit is singing for God, Nrit, dancing for God, Pravachan, what we are doing right now, explaining what we're doing, how it works, what it means, and how to apply, what's the Viniyoga, the application of this karma. And Arpana means offering. And those 7 kinds of karma are nitya karma, they are eternal. So now, Dan, your question is, the goal is to live as long as we can to continue our sadhana? Yes, I agree. We want to continue nitya karma nitya. We want to perform sanatan dharma sanatan. We want to do the eternal actions, the eternal ideal of perfection, the regular, daily, every day without fail karma. We want to do as long as we can so that it becomes the habit of our thinking. And the more that we are in the habit of thinking about God, and this is eternal, and we're not bound by time and space, then we give up. Correspondingly, we give up all of those attachments which keep us bound to this physical world. So, yes, if we are doing sadhana, we want to do sadhana as long as we can. If we are performing nitya karma, we want to perform that karma as long as we can. If we are practicing and performing and living in accordance with Sanatana Dharma, the eternal ideals of perfection, we want to do that as long as we can until we relinquish ourselves from the bonds of all attachment. And thereupon we become eternal ourselves. And so that's the process. Now, if we are bound by worldly concepts and only thinking about our own selves, the prolonging life is of no benefit to anyone. If we are miserable and bound by our physical life, prolonging that life is of no consequence. It's of no value. It's actually a detriment. If I am making japa of poor me, I am so pained. Why is this happening to me? I don't want to go. I'm not ready. Don't take me. Stop. That is the time to tell the doctors and nurses, please do not revive. Please do not resuscitate. Make no invasive procedure in order to revive or resuscitate. It's time to go. However, if you're in the bliss of meditation, if you're sitting in samadhi, if you're lying in japa, if you're listening to the mantra, if you're repeating the mantra, if you're singing the glories of God, then you can stay there eternally. And that will be a blessing to all. Everyone who comes can see an example of an individual who is illuminated with light. Such an example was Sri Ramakrishna, where he was perplexed with pain, he was burdened with his cancer, he was confined to bed, he couldn't get up, he couldn't move, and still he insisted on seeing every visitor who came to see him. He insisted on giving blessings to everyone who came to him. No matter what his own body was experiencing, his mind and his soul were one with God. So his hanging around was a blessing to us all, because we remember that blessing. We remember that example. We try to strive for that epitome of perfection as he exemplified to us. So Dan, if you're in the harmony of yoga, you stay there for as long as God wants you to be around. And if you're not in the harmony of yoga, your hanging around is of no value. It just prolongs the agony for yourself and for others. And possibly it is a greater detriment if you're thinking, oh, poor me, then you're cultivating greater bonds of egotistical attachment. Kumari Ma has asked, it seems as if life on earth is deteriorating sometimes. Certainly it is. It's evolving and then deteriorating. There's an evolution and an involution. There's a cycle of life. There is nourishment and sustenance and evolution, and then we have growth and deteriorations. And so this is the wheel of life. Will our future births, assuming we will have them, be more fortunate since we have practiced sadhana? Absolutely. Remember Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in the 5th chapter, he says, even if you strive to become a yogi and you're not quite successful, your effort is not wasted. You will come back with a greater sense of spiritual fulfillment and a greater sense of spiritual endowment, and you will continue your sadhana from where you left off. So please don't assume that because we practice sadhana and we didn't reach the goal that we have to start over again. Our highest attainment in this lifetime is our starting place for the next lifetime. How will this be possible? Kumarima, there's a sanskara. There's a tendency that attaches itself to the soul, just like a certain propensity for an individual to manifest in a certain way. Just like one child is born and becomes a Mozart or an Einstein, and another becomes a Shree, and then there are the unfortunate people that become a Swamiji, and miscellaneous and other sundry characters. There's something in our DNA, there's something in our consciousness, there's something attached to our soul that says this soul has a tendency, a propensity, a capacity to manifest in this level of perfection. And so that's how it happens when we love satsang, when we enjoy spiritual company, when we are fulfilled by spiritual disciplines, and we find greater impetus, greater necessity to cultivate the spirituality, the spiritual life, then that bhavana, that attitude stays with us as we incarnate into future forms. Usha, namaste Usha. There are various ideas as to how long the soul hovers around the body. Does this vary, or is it a specific time like 3 days? Let me set my watch. Now, Ushama, no, there is no specific time, and there's no way to measure the time, because once the soul is released from the body, she joins she who is beyond time, and she becomes one with Mahakal, Shiva, in his aspect of the devourer of all, or the devourer of all time. So there's no way to measure how long the soul takes in its journey of transmigration from this body that it's leaving to merging with the unity, or the unified consciousness, to become one with God, one in the Paramatma. There's no way to measure. However, both Srima and myself have experience going into houses where the soul that left the body in that house was not released from that house. And you could feel it was a haunted house. There was a spirit there. And once we performed the ceremonies and the mantras designed to release that spirit, the spirit left that premise. And those premises, and there was no longer any necessity to stay around it in disembodied form. It went up to join the Paramatma and become one with God. And then it'll come down into manifestation again. Whenever I come across a creature being attacked by a predator, I interfere and try to save it. I am aware that this is interfering with nature's way, but is this okay? What would you do, Swami? Where it's possible and where it's prudent, you can interfere. I'll tell you the story of the guru who told his disciples, God lives in every single being. So when the disciples went out into the forest and began to pick wood, and they gathered together their bundles, and suddenly a voice of the caretaker of an elephant cried out, "Everyone run! There's an elephant, wild and crazy. A mad elephant is charging down the path. Clear the path." One disciple said, the Guru just told us that God lives in everything. So certainly the God within that elephant is going to recognize the God within me. And he stood his ground while all the other disciples fled. As it would happen, the elephant charged right down the path and smashed into the young disciple, threw him up into the air, and he landed off the path. The elephant proceeded on his way, and all the disciples, fellow brothers of this injured disciple, gathered around him. They carried him carefully to the Guru's ashram. They bandaged his wounds, and he was lying there in a swoon, and the Guru said to him, "What were you thinking? Weren't you told to get off the path?" The disciple said, "Guruji, you told us that God lives in everything. So I thought if God lives in me and God lives in the elephant, why would the God in the elephant want to mangle the God in me?" And Guruji said, "But the caretaker of the elephant, the Mahut, he told you to get off the path, and God lives in him as well. So therefore, why didn't you listen to him?" You see, the predator in your example, Usha, is trying to devour his prey. And you are interfering with nature's way. But the God within you is telling you that you should save this poor unfortunate soul, that the predator will find food elsewhere. So in some cases where it's not difficult for you, where you're not putting yourself at risk, you have every right to step in and say to the predator, "Stop! There will be no hingsha in our presence. I don't want you to slay any other being in our presence." I'll tell you a true story of our ashram. Parvati has a cat named Shree, and we have a number of peacocks. Every spring and summer, the peacocks give birth to little babies. And the little babies love to walk around and wander behind their mother. Well, Shree the cat one day was looking and crouching and looking very desirously at one of those little babies. And I got mad. I picked up a stick and said, "Shree, if you harm one of these little babies, you're going to be toast. I'm putting you outside the ashram. There will be no hingsha in this ashram. I don't want you to eat any of those little baby peacocks." And she listened, and she's still here. And that must have been a long time ago. I remember that dialogue between us. Usha, I was interfering with nature's way, and it was appropriate for me to do so. The cat had other food, and it wasn't necessarily the little peacocks who just came out of their eggs. Dan is asking, Swamiji, can you speak of the balance between using will to stop our transient inclinations and allowing ourselves to fulfill the desire to burn it away? Should we always use our will to stop them, and when will they fight back? Dan, there's a constant battle going on. I don't know about for you, but for me, every time I open my mouth, I have to discriminate. Am I going to say the right thing, or am I going to get into trouble because of what I'm saying? In the same way, if I follow every inclination, whether it be transient or not, I could very easily get strewn from the path. If I go off on every tangent, I will never reach my destination. So now, let's measure up every single desire that comes to us and use our discrimination and say, hey, I've got criteria. I want to get to my destination, which is to sit next to Shree and go to the Divine Mother. Now, if I go off on every tangential relationship and every tangential thought that comes in, desire that comes through my mind, I'm never going to have time to learn to worship. I won't have time to learn to sit with Srima. I won't even be able to sit still. So then, if they fight back, then they're probably not things that you want to do. Just measure them all in the balance of your criteria. That's discrimination. What do you want to do? What's the most important thing to you? If it's, you say, I want to realize God, and every time it comes up to the top of the list, you say, oh, I'll get to that one later. Let's fulfill this one and fulfill that one, that one. Well, if you're really honest with yourselves, if we're all really honest with ourselves, we'll want to put the overriding goal at the top of the list, and every time some small desire comes in, we'll say, is that going to take me closer to my goal or farther away? And oftentimes it's not true that if I fulfill the desire, it won't come back again. Do you know all the work of man's hands goes to his stomach, and yet his appetite is never fulfilled? Why is it we want to eat every day? Because the appetite comes back again and again. Here's a question from Ambika. Namaste Ambika, Namaste Sham. If a person has lost consciousness towards the end of their life, can keep mantras playing on a CD in the room as a substitute for the person being able to chant them themselves? Absolutely. Very good idea. Keep mantras playing, but even better than keeping mantras playing on a CD would be for you to recite them yourself. Is as much as you can have that human contact, and that I am delivering this for you, it has even a greater effect and a greater power. So yes, if you can't be in the room all the time, play the mantra. If you can be in the room, then sing it yourself. Can you speak on the true meaning of what attaining immortality is? Do some try to have immortal bodies, such as the Siddhas and Naths, or is this not true? It is not true, Dan. No one is trying to have an immortal body. Everyone is trying to become immortal in sharing the wisdom and living in the wisdom of immortal bliss. We want to reach that Sat Chit Ananda, that pure consciousness, a true existence is perfect bliss, and that's the immortality. The immortality is to drink the Amrit, the nectar of immortal devotion, the nectar of bhakti. That is the immortality. It's not about the body. And then to make a contribution to this world which is immortal. I want to inspire my family, my friends, all my well-wishers to reach for the Sanatan, for the eternal Dharma, the highest ideal of perfection, the eternal ideal of perfection. That's what we're striving towards. And I believe that's the closest we come to immortality. The gods have drunk the nectar and they are immortal. They can't be slain, but they can be forgotten. Now, we don't want that. We want that the immortality that we bequeath to this earth or to this existence be immortal in the truest sense. We become one with eternal, immortal ideals of perfection. There's a great shloka from the Rig Veda talking to Agni. Tvam Agni pratamang anjarash rishi deva deva nama bhavasiva sakha. You, Agni, you are the fire, the purifier, the light of wisdom, the warmth of devotion. You purify all the impurities. You are first among the performers of tapasya. You became a rishi. You became a deva. You're a god. Deva nama bhava. Your name became a symbol for divinity. And Shiva Shaka, you are the friend of Shiva. Now that's immortality. That is the evolution. He came from an individual who performed tapasya to a rishi, a deva, and a friend of Shiva, one with God eternally. That is the immortality that we seek. We see in the life of Ramakrishna. He was a man. I know I've sat in his room and sang his praise and looked at his pictures. He was a man. He was a rishi. He inspired numerous souls through his career as a minister. And then even today, this is 100 years after he left, or 150 years after he left, or less than 100 years after he left. There are temples to him, and there are images of him, there are murtis of him, and he's worshipped. He's a god. And we're singing songs, Ramakrishna Sharanam. We take his refuge. He has become the friend of Shiva. This is the immortality that we seek, not just the immortality of the body. Kumari Mom is asking, Namaste Kumari, how should we divest of some spiritual possession like our murtis before we die? Should we try to find suitable homes for these objects of meditation? Absolutely. Find your spiritual friends, find your spiritual companions, gift them to temples, get all of your spiritual reminders, all of the tools of your trade. Gift them to people who will respect them and understand them. I have a very dear friend in Canada who every year, he's growing in age, he's even older than I am, and I'm pretty old. I was born about 10,000 years ago. There ain't nothing in this world I don't know. So this gentleman sends me every year a stack of books that he was using. I mean, the spiritual books, Sanskrit books, out-of-print books, and very rare books. And I add them to my collection. And one day I will turn around and do the same for the next generations of sadhus. I will love to bequeath my library and my possessions, my murtis and my balas and my chemtas, my yantra. All of these will become gifts to the family of disciples that follow in my path. What about the mental baggage that we carry? We can give everything away, but we still have our unfinished desires. How will my kids be taken care of? Well, your kids will be taken care of the same way you were. They'll find their niche, they'll find their center, they'll find their way of making their contribution to this world. The best thing that you can give to them is your example that you did it. You found a way to harmonize your spiritual desires, your spiritual quest with your material necessities. And you found that balance, and you'll give that example to your kids. That's the best thing that you could give to them. Your unfinished desires, unfortunately, are bonds that weigh you down towards earthliness, and they require that you come back again and clean up the mess that you made. So we definitely want to pay all our debts as we go. So I wouldn't worry too much about how your kids will be taken care of. You've educated them, you nourished them, you prepared them for their lives, and you gave them an example of someone who was honest, methodical, hardworking, diligent, responsible, and you fulfilled your obligations to society, they can do the same themselves. And whatever inheritance you give them is a pittance in comparison with the example that you've given them. You inspire them to become the best that they could possibly become. Is going to a loka liberation, or is that just making more karma, and does it guarantee being reborn? We all live in a loka. Loka, actually, it's not a geographical location. It could be, but loka is a mental, a paradigm of reality. For example, inside this Devi Mandir that we've created, this is Satyaloka. It's the paradigm of reality, of truth, where God is our focus, and spirituality is our focus. And from morning till night, we are engaged in cultivating that spirituality. So we live in this loka. If you go to Vrindavan, you may say, oh, I've gone to, is Dwapar Yug. It's now a new loka. This is the loka of Radha and Krishna. Go to Ayodhya and you'll find this is the loka of Ram and Sita. Go to downtown New York City. This is Kali Yuga. You got loka as a general idea that permeates the society. It's a bhavana, an attitude towards life, which permeates. It's the prevailing attitude of that location. So here we are in our own loka in the Devi Mandir. We've got this ashram. It covers some grounds. It's got gates and it's got fences. And within the boundaries of our ashram, it's our loka. We have created the bhavana. We've defined the attitude that we want to live in. It's our choice. And now choosing to live in that attitude empowers us to live in our own loka. So you don't necessarily mean by loka a geographical location. Or I'm going to the Deva Loka. I live in the Deva Loka. I'm going to the Brahma Loka. Or I'm going to submerge myself in a specific attitude towards life. And that will be the prevailing attitude of everybody who comes into that environment. How does the practice and philosophy of Bhut Shuddhi, the merging of the elements, relate to death? Is this the practice of preparation of death or for death? No, not necessarily, but it certainly is a practice which empowers us to cultivate the discrimination that we need to leave this earthly body behind. As we purify the elements of each chakra, we raise our consciousness through the chakras, through the energy centers, through the different intensities of energy. The most gross energy being in the Muladhara and the most subtle energy being in the Sahasrara. And we're becoming more subtle and more subtle and more subtle and more subtle as we bring the energy up. Until the subtle vibration permeates our consciousness, and we move through the path of vibrations into the vibration of Shabda Brahman, the sound of God. The sound that is one with God. There's no duality. We use that Bhut Shuddhi practice to purify ourselves so that we can free ourselves from the lower energies that bind us to the earth. Remember, the lower chakras are the Pashubhav, the medium chakras are the Viryabhav, striving to become better, striving for divinity, and the higher chakras, Agnya chakra and Sahasrara, are Divyabhav, the divine attitude. So as we perform the Bhuta Shuddhi, we raise the energy from the animalistic tendencies to the heroic tendencies, the heroic attitude. I'm going to use my discrimination and see which ones of those animalistic ideas should be pursued and which one should be forgotten and left behind. And now I'm a Virya, I'm a hero, I'm a warrior, I'm doing battle with my lower nature. And now as I raise that attitude up and that vibration up, I become divine, and it becomes consistently divine, and I can sit before you and express the inspiration of divinity. Because I get to leave my animalistic nature below, I leave my striving and discriminating nature below, and I reside in the divine nature, like Shree does. So that's how the Bhuta Shuddhi will be very helpful in our development. Some people took this one practice out from the context of the cosmic puja, and they called it Kriya Yoga. When I was in Benares, I was told by a resident there that enlightened souls were not cremated, but were brought to the center of the Ganges, and their bodies were placed there to be sunk into the river bed. Is this true? And if so, what is the reason for this? It's not really true. It may have happened sometime, but it's not a common custom. Oftentimes people, we discussed it in an earlier discussion, oftentimes enlightened souls or people, highly regarded gurus, are interred in a pit of salt, and there's a mausoleum built over their gravesite, which becomes known as a samadhi. Generally, they don't, the only people they just drop into the river are beggars and people without any capacity to pay for a cremation. Those are the only ones that are just dropped into the Ganges. Others are either burned, cremated with wood fires. There's two places, Manika Karangat, and that's the famous one. And then there's also Harishchandra Ghat on the northern side, towards the university. And now there's an electric crematorium, which other people use as well. We were told not to eat food at the house of the departed. Please explain why not. You may eat food, we do not. Shree and I will not partake of food offered to the departed. There are several reasons that we don't take it. It is not a prohibition for anyone else. But I'll tell you the reasons that we do not take. First of all, oftentimes the food at the Shraddha is heavy food for us. It's not our kind of sattvic food. So we eat a very sattvic diet, and we try not to eat other people's food whenever we can avoid it. That's a common principle. The second thing is the food offered at the Shraddha is often offered in sorrow. And people don't have the attitude of sharing. It's not offered to God as a celebration of appreciation, a privilege. It's offered as a necessity and with great sorrow. So we don't like to eat the vibrations of sorrow. Another thing is, food prepared in Shraddha is often, it doesn't communicate the vibrations that we want to ingest. So we try to avoid taking the food at Shraddha. Bharati is asking, Namaste Bharati. In the U.S., it is the custom of the family to feed the guests that come to the funeral of their loved ones. But recently I was told not to partake any food after a funeral, to bathe and change my clothes soon after the funeral. What is the reasoning? Bharati, we suggest that anytime you get around the sorrow and suffering of a deceased, the first thing that you want to do is bathe and change your clothes before you eat. The reason being is all of your outside has picked up all the vibrations of sorrow and suffering and grief, and you want to be radiating purity and clarity and joy. So before you take your food, you want to certainly get rid of the clothes and get rid of the vibrations and put yourself in the greatest harmony possible. We have heard of sadhus drinking some fluid from the head from the departed. Can you explain? Yes. There is a tradition, especially among Agori and some Naths, that drink the cranial fluid, or when they perform the couple kriya, instead of popping the cranium at the top, they hit the cranium from the side, and then they can remove the cranium and they clean it out and make a cup made of the bone of the skull, the top of the skull, and they eat from this. Now, the tradition of Aghor, it means beyond fear, beyond repulsion, beyond everything is one. That's generally what it means. It has been much publicized because it's fantastic. Or it's so out of the ordinary. But in actuality, there are very, very few Agoris that are practicing this kind of sadhana. I was privileged to travel with some Agoris at some times and have had some experiences in this way. So the reason we do that is to go beyond fear, beyond repulsion. It's almost a dare. I dare you to do it. As how it was presented, it wasn't any example of spiritual enlightenment to me. So I didn't find such great inspiration in that, in those practices or being with those practitioners. Generally, they took many intoxicants, a lot of wine and a lot of bhang, and they stayed stoned most of the time and did crazy things. And because it was so outlandish, they were feared by village people. So that they had a livelihood, they could beg, they could command, bring me some money, bring me some tea, bring me some food. And I didn't see it so much as a way of enlightenment. But I will admit that when I sat in cremation grounds, there were many Agoris that came, or sometimes Agoris, true Agoris would come, and we would share our different practices together. If we put the ashes in the urn, are you trapping the soul? No. You're trapping the ashes. But the true meaning of the cremation is that we came from the earth and we're going back to the earth. We came from the nature, we're going back to the nature. We came from all the elements and we're going back to all the elements. And we want the ashes to be set free if they can be. If you bury a saint, are you trapping their soul too? No. You're just letting their body decompose slowly of its own accord. Do you keep them from evolving? No. Devi is asking, Namaste Devi Ma. In Vijnana Bhairava Tantra it says, with intangible breath in center of the forehead, as this reaches heart at the moment of sleep, have direction over dreams and over death itself. Wow. And have read through that, I have read that through this practice, you can direct where you come back into life. Is this true? I can't say, Davy. I can say I'm really pleased with the life that I've been privileged to lead. I don't know if I directed it. I assume I did, because I chose a family to be born in which gave me training to free me from economic necessities, and they trained me so that I was employable and I could make I had economic resources, and then they set me free and said, okay, now you wander around the world, if you will, and find the lifestyle that you appreciate, and they gave me blessings. And even to this day, they give me blessings. My whole family blesses me. So I believe that I directed myself to come back into life, to lead this kind of life. Yes, it's true. But if you look at this wording here, the intangible breath in the center of the forehead, we're talking about that shamanya, prana, apana, samanya, udana, dhyana. Prana is coming in, apana going out, udana going up, and dhyana going out. And samana is still. Equilibrium. The breath that's in perfect equilibrium, in perfect stillness, in the center of the forehead. Now, we talk about the vibration which comes as a yawn, where the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth connect. It's that same It's that same vibration as the intangible breath. You can't feel it. It's not outside. It's not coming outside. And when this reaches the heart at the moment of sleep, or shushupti, when you just go into that period, a moment where you're devoid of all thought, have direction over dreams, over death itself, you can control all the subtle vibrations in your mind. You control your dreams, you control your thoughts, you control death itself. Beautiful passage. Thank you, Davy. Ambika is asking, when people have an out-of-body experience or astral travel, is there any similarity to the death experience and leaving the body? Generally, not. Ambika, when you have an out-of-body experience, there's an experiencer there, and there's an experience, there's some phenomena that you can report when you came back. There's a perceiver and an object of perception. The observed and the observer. Now, in death, there's only the observer. There's no duality. We move beyond the duality. We move beyond experience. So it's not the same as having an out-of-body experience and coming back into the body and saying, okay, I had this wonderful experience. Julia asks, when Ma and you pass, can we still offer our inheritances to the Devi Mandir? Absolutely, Julia. The Devi Mandir isn't Ma and me. The Devi Mandir is an eternal monument to the love and joy of worship of the Devi. This is not just about Ma and me. This is a monument to our love. And the Devi Mandir isn't limited by geography. As big as your heart, as big as the Devi Mandir, and we have lots of big hearts. So absolutely, it's possible for you to do so. Would it be appropriate for us to offer our ashes to the Devi Mandir? No, absolutely not. However, it could be appropriate to ask that your ashes be scattered in the Devi Mandir. Make Visarjan in the Devi Mandir, or that Ma and I make the scattering of your ashes on your behalf, as we deem appropriate, or as you wish, in accordance with your wishes. We would take them out to sea. We would put them on a mountaintop. We would put them at the foot of a tree. We would take them with us to India and put them in the Ganges, as you would wish. But that's something that we would do for the beloved family members of the Devi Mandir. So, but please don't write in your will, after I go burn my body and send the ashes to Swami. I think I'd become buried in ashes. Here's a question from Rami. Mami, namaste Rami. Namaste Srini Baba. Devotees of Thakur, like Girish Ghosh, saw Thakur and Ma come to get him in his last moment of life. Is it faith or karma or something else that bestows such a blessing? Rami, it's all of the above. Your faith will dictate your karma, and that karma allows something else, the magic, to take place. That something else is the magic. That bhava bhakti, that's the magic. The magic is that you love so much that it becomes your reality and you can see it. You can see it with your own heart. You can see it with your own eyes. You know it's true. It's a priori knowledge, as Kant was to describe it. It's something that you know. You don't even have to reason, you don't even have to think, you don't have to logically deduce. That must have been God coming to get this soul. So to get that kind of blessing, you need the faith to perform the karma. And the karma yields the magic. And the magic gives you the opportunity to perceive that bhav, that feeling, that bhava bhakti, that feeling, the attitude of devotion. Ushama says, when I talk with people about death, most of them are not afraid of dying, but of the suffering that often comes with it. Do you know if this is some kind of purification? Did Ramakrishna or Jesus suffer for us? Usha, I believe it is a purification. I believe that people suffer because they've got so much attachment to the earth, to the material, to the material life and to the material world, that it causes them to suffer as they leave. It is a purification to go through that suffering. Otherwise, other people sit in the asana and sing the name of God, and they leave sitting in an asana. Now, Ramakrishna did suffer for us. Jesus did suffer for us. I believe Shree is suffering for us. All of these people came down with they exited their body in a tortured state. Ramakrishna was perplexed by cancer, and Jesus was actually physically abused on the cross, and his suffering was just because of his love for us. And I believe Shree is doing the similar thing, being perplexed with various diseases, and still she comes to sit with us in satsang and inspire us and be the source of inspiration and nourishment for our community. Ambika, does everyone go to the same plane after they die? No, I'm taking Indian Airlines. If not, what are the different planes of existence and what determines where we go? Ambika, I would think that people who are weighed down by worldliness will stay near to the worldly plane. And people who are elevated and uplifted with spirituality their soul will rise, and the effulgent essence will percolate up to the highest realms, and everyone doesn't stay in the same plane. But when we all merge with God, then there's a oneness, and that unity consciousness is beyond geography, so there's no plane to take. It seems challenging to maintain the awareness that we are dying while we are in the midst of our life and working so hard to keep a positive attitude. Can you please discuss the balance of these two awarenesses? Do you know, mostly it's a Buddhist concept that says if only we knew the time of death, that we would prepare ourselves and we would be ready. So therefore, be ready all the time. However, the Hindu concept says, because we don't know the time of death, we should rejoice all the time, because we don't know how long we get to stay here. Now, do you want to look at the glass as half empty, or is the glass half full? I don't know that it's hard to maintain a positive attitude. I believe, I don't know why, maybe it's the company that I keep, but I get to have a blast every day. I'm enjoying life, and I enjoy the association that I have, and I enjoy communicating and sharing with you all. And all of this is part of a positive attitude which I appreciate, and I think it comes from the Bhava Bhakti. Bhava Bhakti utle, aha mori mori. When that attitude of devotion rises and rises, I dissolve into the ocean of consciousness. I dissolve into the ocean of infinite goodness. I dissolve into the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal ideals of perfection. Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Namaste.
Namaste, everybody.